"Get down and wash those dishes or no dinner tonight." The voice came like a thunderclap. The woman who stood before them was Maya William, 29 years old, caramel-skinned, steady-eyed, and completely unimpressed. One hand held a dishcloth, the other braced firmly on her hip. Her apron bore fresh stains of marinara sauce like a badge of courage. I said no. Her voice didn't rise. It simply left no room for negotiation. Eli blinked. "You're not scared?" Maya's eyes narrowed. "Should I be?" Evan nudged his brother. "She's not like the others." She wasn't. That became clear within the first hour. Maya moved between the twins, rolling up their sleeves. "Make sure you rinse both sides. We're not feeding ants tonight. Got it?" "Yes, Mom," both mumbled, looking half-dazed. It should have been a moment of triumph. But then it happened. Without warning, Evan's face twisted. A spark of old rebellion lit in his eyes. He grabbed a ceramic plate, took a step back, and hurled it straight at Maya's shoulder. The impact echoed through the kitchen. The plate shattered against her collarbone, with a sickening crack. Splinters of porcelain spraying the tile. Maya steadied herself. The pain was sharp, but she didn't shout. She didn't call for help. Instead, she turned slowly, looked Eli in the eye, and walked toward him. The boy flinched, expecting yelling, punishment, or worse. But Maya knelt down to his level, gently touched her bruised shoulder, and said softly, "That hurt. But I don't think you meant to hurt me. I think you're just angry, and I don't blame you for that." Eli's mouth opened, then closed. Tears welled in his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. "You're not gonna quit?" he asked, voice trembling. "Not unless you break my legs, and even then, I'll just bring crutches." He stared at her. She reached out and touched his cheek, wiping off a smudge of peanut butter. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Maya stood upright, met their eyes, and said softly, "Everyone bleeds. Now grab a sponge." There was a pause just long enough to carry the weight of something new. Then, like an invisible thread pulling them, the boys moved. Slowly, awkwardly, they walked to the sink. Not because they were afraid, not because they were ashamed, but because, somehow, for the first time in their lives, someone stood their ground without raising their voice or leaving. Someone who didn't just survive their games, she understood them. Earlier that morning, Maya had arrived wearing faded jeans and confidence. She didn't flinch when Clara warned her that she'd be the 30th nanny in less than a month. She didn't even blink when she stepped over a shattered ceramic rooster on her way to the kitchen. And she definitely didn't scream when she saw her welcome gift, a fake snake in the bread drawer. Eli and Evan watched her closely, waiting for the shriek, the flinch, the panicked phone call for an Uber. Instead, Maya calmly took the fake snake, examined it, then turned to the boys and said, "You forgot to add ketchup. Would have been more convincing." They were stunned, even more so when she reassembled the chicken pot pie they had tried to sabotage by replacing salt with sugar. She'd tasted it, nodded thoughtfully, and without a word, made them both eat it with her, because in this house, we fix what we ruin. By lunchtime, the boys were confused. By nap time, they were frustrated. Their tricks weren't working. Now, just hours later, the two boys stood side by side at the sink, sleeves rolled up, washing dishes. Not because they were afraid, because for the first time someone had stayed. Someone had seen them through the chaos, through the worst they could throw, and still looked them in the eye with calm and care. From the doorway, Garrett Langston watched in speechless amazement. He had stepped out of his office expecting to find his kitchen in flames, or at least buried in macaroni and glitter. What he saw instead were his sons rinsing plates, laughing softly, and Maya between them offering correction without criticism. If you feel touched by Maya in this moment, hit like, and comment where you're watching from. You might find others nearby watching this story with you. He leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Clara appeared beside him. "Told you. This one's made of iron." Garrett didn't reply. His eyes were fixed on Maya's bruised shoulder, barely visible beneath her sleeve. He watched as she gently reached over Evan's hand to show him how to stack the bowls without making them clatter. And when Eli yawned and leaned his head lightly against her side, Garrett felt a lump rise in his throat. "She got hit, didn't she?" he murmured. Clara nodded. "Eli. Threw a plate. Full force." Garrett winced, and she stayed. Clara smiled. She stayed. Later, As the hallway settled into night, Garrett sat quietly near the upstairs landing. From the twins' room, he heard her voice again. "All right, snuggle down. Yes, that includes you, Evan. No, you cannot sleep in the laundry basket tonight." The boys giggled. "Tomorrow's a new day," Maya said gently. "And we start it by making our beds. You hear me?" Two sleepy voices mumbled yeses. Then silence. And peace. Garrett leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like home. Garrett stood at the second-floor railing, still staring down at the now quiet kitchen below. The last plate had clinked into the drying rack. His twins were upstairs, tucked into bed by a woman who should have been long gone, if things had followed the usual pattern. But Maya William hadn't screamed, hadn't stormed out, hadn't even raised her voice. She'd stayed. He couldn't remember the last time his house felt still without feeling cold. The last few years had left their scars. The media called him a genius. The boardrooms called him a visionary. His ex-wife called him a ghost. But standing there, listening to the faint echo of Maya's lullaby drifting down the stairs, Garrett felt something he hadn't in a long time: uncertainty. He turned away from the railing and headed toward the guest wing. There was something about this woman that stirred a strange restlessness in him. He wasn't sure if it was admiration or discomfort. Maybe both. Down in the kitchen, Maya quietly wiped the remaining blood off her sleeve. The bruise on her shoulder had darkened into a reddish-purple bloom, but she ignored it. Her fingers moved with the ease of someone who had patched herself up more times than she could count. Clara returned with 2 mugs of tea, her steps heavier than usual. She slid one toward Maya and took a seat at the breakfast nook. "You know," Clara began, "I was here when Garrett's wife left." Maya didn't look up. "Veronica Langston. You know the name? I Googled the family before I came. I always do." Clara gave a short, dry laugh. "Then you must know what people say about the boys." Maya finally looked at her. "People say a lot when they're too lazy to look closer." Clara sipped her tea. "That's what I thought too. But then I started believing the stories. Until today." There was a long silence between them. Maya reached for the hot mug, her fingers lingering on the ceramic. "I don't expect them to change overnight," she said softly. "But they listened. That's a start." Clara nodded. "You've got a backbone. Not many do. Garrett, he's smart. But parenting's never been something he could code his way out of." Maya didn't respond. Instead, she stared out the window into the darkness beyond the garden. Somewhere out there, a wind chime rang softly. It reminded her of home before everything. "How long do you plan to stay?" Clara asked. 30 days, Maya said. "That's the agreement." "And after?" Maya shrugged. "Depends on them, not on me." That night, Garrett couldn't sleep. He pulled up the nanny agency's file on Maya again. It was surprisingly thin. Only the essentials. No lawsuits. No glowing letters of recommendation. Just bullet points. Calm under pressure. Specializes in children with behavioral disorders. 10 years of experience. Oakland native. No family listed. No spouse. No connections. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling. 30 days. We'll see. The next morning began in stunned silence. Maya had woken the twins at 7 a.m. sharp. No coddling. No negotiations. Just a firm knock, followed by, "You've got 10 minutes to be dressed and at the table. And if I find peanut butter in anyone's hair again, breakfast is toast." Literally. Somehow, they showed up on time. Even Clara had to blink twice when she saw the boys, Eli with a half-buttoned shirt, Evan with mismatched socks, but both sitting at the kitchen table. Maya served scrambled eggs and toast, slid 2 cups of milk across the table, and sat down with them like it was the most natural thing in the world. Garrett entered, already dressed for a meeting, coffee in hand, and stopped short. "What is this?" he asked. "Breakfast," Maya said simply. Garrett raised an eyebrow. "Voluntarily?" "They didn't have much of a choice," she replied, without looking up. "Choices come after discipline." Eli stuffed toast into his mouth and grinned, bits falling onto the table. Maya shot him a look. "Chew with your mouth closed." He swallowed. "Guilty." "Yes, ma'am." Garrett's eyes narrowed. "Did you bribe them?" "Nope." "Threaten them?" only with toastless mornings. He looked at his sons who were, for once, not trying to set anything on fire and then back at her. "You're some kind of miracle worker," he muttered. "I'm just consistent," Maya said. "They know I mean what I say. Most people don't." After breakfast, the boys helped clear the table without being asked. Garrett watched in disbelief as Evan grabbed a plate and rinsed it with the practiced motion of a busboy. Not perfect, but real. Eli hummed to himself, scrubbing crumbs off the counter. Maya wiped her hands and turned to Garrett. "You'll be late if you don't leave now." He glanced at his watch. "You run the whole house now?" "I run what needs running," she said without missing a beat. Garrett blinked. Right. As he grabbed his keys and walked out, something tugged at him. A strange ache in the chest. He wasn't used to feeling unnecessary in his own home, but this was different. It felt like relief. Later that day, Maya took the boys outside. No iPads, no video games, no distractions, just fresh air, an old garden hose, and a stack of chalk. She made them run laps, then sat with them drawing dragons on the sidewalk. They asked about her scars. She didn't lie. "Got this one from a boy who thought I was the enemy. Turned out he just wanted someone to listen." "Did he say sorry?" Evan asked. "No, but he learned to say thank you. That was enough." The boys were quiet for a moment, digesting that. Then Eli looked at her and said, "I don't want you to leave." Maya smiled gently. "You'll have to give me a reason to stay." But that night, when Garrett returned, he found Maya on the back porch, sipping tea. The boys were asleep. The house was quiet again. He walked out to her, hands in his pockets. "You made an impression," he said. "I didn't come to impress you." "Good. I hate being impressed." They stood in silence for a while. Then he added, "You're not like the others." "I know. Why did you take this job?" Maya turned to look at him, her voice steady. "Because every kid deserves someone who stays." He looked at her, the soft light catching the bruise on her arm. He didn't ask if it still hurt. She didn't offer. But in that stillness, something unspoken settled between them, respect, fragile but real. And perhaps, for the first time in a long while, hope. On the third morning, Garrett awoke not to shouting, not to a shattered vase, but to the smell of cinnamon. He followed it, still tying his tie, down the hall and toward the kitchen, half expecting it to be a dream. But there it was, Maya, hair tied back, moving like she belonged, sliding a tray of fresh cinnamon rolls into the center of the table. The boys sat dressed and waiting, hands folded like altar boys. Eli stole a glance at Maya's back and whispered to Evan, "Don't ask for extra icing. She gives you the look." Maya turned around. "I heard that." Eli's eyes widened. "How?" "I've got special powers," she said, placing a warm roll on each plate. "They're called ears." Garrett cleared his throat, drawing attention to himself. "This feels suspiciously like a functioning household." Maya glanced at him. "That's the goal, isn't it?" He stepped in, curious, looking at the breakfast table like it was some kind of sacred altar. "You baked?" "They helped," Maya said, gesturing toward the boys. Evan held up his hand, 3 fingers extended, only burned 3. Garrett looked at his sons, genuinely studying them. There was something different in their posture. Still rambunctious underneath, no doubt. But there was grounding, like the chaos had weight now. He turned to Maya. "So what's next? Do I find them folding laundry and quoting Shakespeare?" "Nope," she replied. "Today, we're writing apology letters." Both boys groaned. Garrett blinked. "Apology letters? For all 30 of the nannies they've terrorized. You have their addresses?" "I made calls last night." Eli folded his arms. "But most of them hated us." Which is why you're writing," Maya said, calmly buttering toast. "You don't only say sorry when someone likes you. You say sorry because you did something wrong." Garrett leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You think that'll matter? To the boys or the women?" "Both. It'll matter that they tried," Maya said. "And it'll matter that they remember." Later that day, Maya sat them at the large oak table in the study with pencils and blank stationery. For the first few minutes, the boys whined. Evan even tried hiding under the table. But Maya didn't budge. Instead, she sat at the end, sipping her tea, and letting the discomfort settle. When the twins finally gave in and started scribbling, Maya took out a list. Not of the nannies, but something more personal. It was her own handwriting. Names, ages, dates, scars. She glanced at the first name. Trevor, 13. Burned arm. Foster care. Ran away after I left. Next, Maribel, 10. Wouldn't speak for 3 months. Started singing after cooking lessons. And then, Jeremiah, 8. Threw a rock at my car. Asked me to come back 3 years later. She folded the paper and slipped it back into her book. That list wasn't for anyone else. It was for the days when she needed to remember why she stayed, why she came back, why she never let herself walk away even when they broke the rules, or her skin, or her heart. Done, Evan called, waving his paper in the air. Maya took it. Read the scrawl. Dear Miss Harriet, I'm sorry I replaced your shampoo with yogurt. You didn't deserve that. I was mad because my mom left, and I thought it was funny. I don't think it's funny anymore. Sorry again. Evan. She nodded once. Good. Now rewrite it. This time, no spelling errors. Evan groaned again. Garrett appeared in the doorway, holding a tablet. I just got an email from the agency. They said you turned down the full-time offer. Maya didn't look up. I said 30 days. You do realize you're the first one to last more than 48 hours. I'm aware. He stepped further into the room. You have other offers? I always have somewhere to go. He hesitated. But, do you want to go? She looked up then, gaze steady. That's not your choice to make. Garrett opened his mouth to say something, but closed it again. He wasn't used to people denying him, not in boardrooms, not in life. But Maya, she didn't deny him out of pride or rebellion. She simply existed on her own terms. You're different, he said at last. She gave a faint smile. You keep saying that like it's an insult. No, he replied. It's just new. Garrett turned and left without another word. That evening, the twins placed their letters into envelopes, sealed them with effort, and asked Maya if they'd have to lick the stamps themselves. Yes, she said, because apologies shouldn't taste sweet. No. Later, as the sun sank behind the hills and the house settled into a hush, Maya sat on the front steps of the porch. Clara joined her, bringing 2 slices of apple pie and a bottle of ginger ale. Boys are different, Clara said, cutting a piece. They told me thank you tonight. I almost fell over. They'll change if you give them a reason, Maya said. Everyone does. You think Garrett'll change too? Maya didn't answer right away. He watches more than he speaks. That's always dangerous. Why? Because it means he's waiting to see where the power lies. Clara chewed slowly. And what about you? I don't need the power, Maya said. I just want the peace. Inside, Garrett stood near the window, watching the 2 women. He saw the bandage on Maya's arm catch the light. He noticed how Clara laughed more in that short moment than she had in months. He felt like an outsider to his own life. His home was functioning, but he didn't know if it still belonged to him. That night, Maya closed the twins' bedroom door and whispered a silent prayer. Not for safety, not for strength, but for clarity. She had 30 days, and already she could feel the fault lines shifting under her feet. Somewhere deep inside this mansion of silence and privilege, something buried long ago was trying to rise, and she wasn't sure yet whether to stop it or set it free. The 4th day began with silence, no shouting, no broken glass, no chaos. Just the quiet sound of a violin humming through the west wing of the Langston estate. It was soft, melancholic, the kind of tune that carried memories inside its notes. Maya paused in the hallway, her arms full of laundry. The sound pulled her like a thread. She followed it past the sunroom, past the twins' craft room, and finally to a door she hadn't seen open before, the music room. Inside, Garrett sat alone at the baby grand piano. His fingers didn't touch the keys. The music came from a small speaker near the windows, playing a recorded performance, one that sounded live, raw, almost broken. He didn't notice her at first, not until she shifted her weight and the wooden floor creaked. Garrett turned slightly, surprised. You're up early. I live here now, remember? She replied softly. He gestured toward the piano. Used to be my wife's favorite room. Veronica could play anything by ear. No training. just felt her way through it. Maya walked slowly into the room, letting her fingers glide across the polished edge of the piano. Is this her playing? Garrett nodded. Recorded this just before she left. Said she wanted the boys to hear her music in case they forgot her voice. Maya stayed silent, letting the weight of that sentence settle. He glanced at her. They don't talk about her. Not to me. Not to anyone. Bleh. They don't know how, she said. And I don't think they believe you want to listen. Garrett looked away. Maybe I don't. That's the problem. He sighed. You're not a therapist. No, Maya said. But I know pain when I see it, and I know what it does to boys when it's ignored. He stood, crossing to the window. Why do you care so much? Maya didn't answer right away. She walked to the piano bench and Saturday, her voice, when it came, was low but steady. Because someone should have cared when I was 5. Garrett turned, surprised. Maya wasn't looking at him. She was looking straight ahead, eyes focused on a spot he couldn't see. No one asked me what I felt. No one waited for me to speak. They just labeled me a problem and passed me along. Silence. Then she added, So now, I don't walk away from kids who throw plates. I walk toward them. Garrett said nothing. The only sound left in the room was the fading whisper of the violin. Later that morning, the twins were unusually quiet. They sat on the rug in the library, flipping through picture books Maya had picked out from the city library, books about grief, about missing people, about feelings that didn't always have names. Eli traced a drawing with his finger, a little boy sitting in the dark, holding a flashlight. Is this about us? He asked. Maya sat beside him. It could be. Or it could be about someone else who felt like they were in the dark. Evan frowned. Dad doesn't talk about Mom. I know. Do you think he misses her? Maya didn't lie. I think he does, in his own way. But sometimes grown-ups think that not talking is the same as protecting. It's not. Eli leaned his head against her arm. She used to sing when she braided my hair. Maya looked down at him, surprised. He hadn't mentioned his mother before. She made French toast with bananas, Evan added, and called us her little monkeys. Maya smiled, gently stroking their backs. She sounds like she loved you very much. Eli nodded, then whispered. She left anyway. The words hung in the air like dust, not angry, just true. Maya didn't try to explain it away. She let them sit with the truth. That wasn't your fault, she said. Her leaving wasn't about you. Then who was it about? Evan asked. Her, Maya said, and your dad, and something between them that broke. Eli's fingers tightened around the book. I thought maybe she'd come back if we were good. Maya's heart ached, but her voice remained steady. You're good, whether she comes back or not. That afternoon, Garrett met with his legal team in the study. The meeting was routine shareholder updates, property holdings, a pending lawsuit from a disgruntled former partner. But his mind wasn't there. It was in the music room. It was with the boys. He barely noticed when one of the lawyers mentioned Maya's background check. And there's a sealed juvenile record, the lawyer said casually. We're trying to unseal it, but it's difficult across state lines. You still want her here? Garrett looked up, sharp. Has she done anything wrong? No, quite the opposite actually. Staff morale's up, house productivity too. Clara says the boys are sleeping on schedule for the first time in months. Garrett nodded slowly. Then leave it sealed. The lawyer blinked. Sir? I said leave it. She's earned her place. That night, Maya found a letter slid under her door. No name, just folded paper. Inside, I don't remember her smell anymore, but I remember her laugh. Thank you for letting me say that. The handwriting was small, a bit shaky. Evans, she guessed. She placed the letter in the drawer beside her bed, next to the one she'd kept from Jeremiah, the boy who once shattered her windshield and later sent her a Christmas card that read, Still not biting. Thank you. Outside, wind moved through the trees. The Langston estate, long a fortress of silence, was starting to breathe again. And Maya, alone in her guest room, with its warm lamp and gentle quiet, closed her eyes and exhaled. She was only 4 days in, but something in this place, in these children, in him, was changing. Maya wasn't a woman easily shaken, but even she paused that morning when she entered the dining room and found the long mahogany table, set for 4. 3 chairs were placed at the near end, one for her, one for Eli, one for Evan. And at the far end, where the head of the table always sat empty since Veronica left, was a fourth setting. A porcelain plate, a linen napkin, a gleaming fork and knife. She stared at it for a long moment. Clara entered behind her, carrying a pitcher of orange juice, and followed Maya's gaze. "Oh," Clara said, shifting uncomfortably. "That must have been the boys." Maya raised an eyebrow. "They set the table?" "Insisted on it. Said they wanted to try something new." The twins burst into the room a second later, both wearing clip-on bowties over their t-shirts. "Do you like it?" Evan asked. "We put that plate out for Mommy." Eli nodded solemnly. "It's so she can still eat with us, in case she ever decides to come back." Maya swallowed, her voice caught behind emotion she didn't expect. "I think she'd be touched." The boys took their seats. Maya sat with them. No one dared sit in the fourth chair, but they talked to it. Eli passed the salt to Mommy. Evan told her about the new book Maya had read them the night before. Garrett arrived late, laptop in hand, and paused in the doorway when he saw the table. His eyes fell on the fourth place setting. He said nothing, just set his laptop aside, rolled up his sleeves, and sat across from Maya. No one asked him to explain, but when he reached for the syrup and poured a little extra on Mommy's pancakes, Maya felt something shift. It wasn't grief, it was permission. Later that day, Garrett took a call from his head of security. "She's clean," the man said over the phone. "Whatever was in her juvenile record, it's sealed tight. No leaks, no red flags. But she's no stranger to the system." "Well," Garrett looked out over the garden where Maya was sitting under the oak tree, sketching while the boys chased each other with sticks. "I don't need a perfect past," Garrett said. "I need someone who won't run." "Then she's your girl." He ended the call and watched as Maya stood, dusted herself off, and calmly separated the boys before Evan poked Eli in the eye. There was no shouting, no panic, just presence. Later that afternoon, Garrett approached her by the garden bench. "Do you ever wonder what your life would be like if you hadn't chosen this work?" he asked. Maya looked up from her sketchbook, eyes steady. "Every day. And I'd still choose this." Garrett sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "It's not easy, you know, what you're doing." "Parenting?" "No, staying." Maya smiled faintly. "You're right. It's not easy, but it's necessary." He looked at her profile, the way her eyes softened when the wind rustled the trees, the quiet poise she carried like armor. "You ever think about being a parent?" he asked suddenly. She didn't flinch. "I've thought about it." Garrett waited. "And? I'm not sure the world is safe enough yet." He didn't ask what she meant. He had a feeling the answer would be bigger than both of them. That evening, after the boys went to bed, Maya found a small package outside her door. No name, just a ribbon. Inside was a note in Garrett's handwriting, "For the ghost at the table." It was a small frame, holding a photo of Veronica and the twins smiling, laughing, sunlit. Maya stared at it, her throat tightening. He hadn't asked her to put it up. He hadn't explained. He'd just given her the choice. The next morning, she placed it on the mantel in the dining room. The boys noticed first. "She looks happy," Evan said, touching the edge of the frame. "She was," Garrett said quietly, from the doorway. They all turned. It was the first time he'd spoken of Veronica without being asked. "I wasn't always a good husband," he said. "And I wasn't ready to be a father. But she gave me these two." He ruffled the boy's hair. "And I'm trying to deserve them." Maya said nothing, but the look in her eyes said everything. The boys returned to their cereal. Clara hummed softly in the kitchen, and for the first time, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt lived in. It felt healing. That afternoon, the boys gave Maya something wrapped in brown paper and too much tape. "Open it," Eli said, practically vibrating. Inside was a hand-drawn picture. Maya standing between the two boys. Arms wide, a big red heart around them. At the bottom, it read, "Please don't leave." Maya blinked fast. "It's beautiful." "You like it?" Evan asked. "We used Mommy's old crayons, the good ones." Maya pulled them into a hug. "I love it, and I'm here." "Okay, for the rest of the 30 days, I'm here." Eli looked up. "What happens after 30 days? Maya didn't answer. Not yet, because in that moment, 30 days suddenly didn't feel like enough. And deep inside her something whispered, maybe you've already stayed longer than you planned. Maybe this time, she wouldn't have to leave at all. The following Monday morning, the house was unnaturally quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes with peace, but the stillness that follows tension, like the air holding its breath before a storm. Maya noticed it immediately. No boys darting through the halls, no cereal bowls clinking in the kitchen, no Eli shouting about mismatched socks. Even Clara's radio, usually humming old soul tunes by 7:15, was off. Something was wrong. She found Clara first, in the laundry room, folding towels with a stiffness in her shoulders Maya hadn't seen before. What happened? Maya asked. Clara didn't look up. Garrett left early. Real early. Phone glued to his ear. He looked. Stormy. Maya nodded slowly. And the boys? In the library. Haven't said much. Just waiting, I think. Maya made her way through the west hallway, her steps soft against the dark wood floor. She paused at the library door. Listening. Eli's voice hushed. Do you think she's mad? No, Evan replied. She's like a robot. She doesn't get mad. I threw the list away. Mine. Maya knocked gently, then pushed the door open. They sat on the floor, surrounded by markers and scraps of paper. Evan's fingers were stained blue. Eli held a crumpled ball of torn notes. She crouched beside them. What list? Eli looked down. The one we made. The things we wanted to say to Mommy. We wrote it last night. And I thought it was dumb. So I ripped it up. Maya reached out, slowly smoothing the paper. It was in pieces, 10 or 12 scraps, but legible. Sorry I made you cry. I still remember your perfume. I don't blame you. Maya felt the tightness in her chest. She took a breath and said gently, nothing you feel is dumb. Not grief. Not missing her. And not being angry. Evan's eyes were wet. Are you going to leave now? No, Maya said, placing a hand on each of their backs. Not for that. Not for anything you feel. They clung to her without words. The moment held them in its fragile warmth. But outside that door, something else had already cracked. Garrett didn't return until after sunset. He came in through the kitchen, his jaw tight, phone still in hand, suit coat slung over his shoulder like it had been torn off mid-sprint. He didn't say hello. He barely nodded at Clara. He poured himself a glass of bourbon, neat, and downed it in one swallow. Maya stepped in, arms crossed. Want to tell me what's going on? Garrett poured another and didn't answer right away. Then quietly, Veronica's back in town. Maya's eyes narrowed. And? She's filed for partial custody. Maya blinked. After 2 years of silence? She says she's found stability, a therapist, a new job. She wants supervised visits, then shared time. Maya stood very still. Garrett looked at her, something raw in his face. I don't know if she means it. I don't know if it's guilt, or pressure from her family, or just her latest phase, but the paperwork is real. And the boys? They don't know yet. You need to tell them. I know. He sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking older than his 44 years. I finally feel like things are working. And now, Maya stepped closer. They are working. But you don't get to freeze now. This is when you show up. Garrett looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing something unfamiliar behind her calm exterior. How do you stay so clear-headed? She didn't flinch. I've lived through chaos that didn't give me the luxury of breaking down. That silenced him. Maya turned to leave, then paused. You need to fight for them, Garrett, but not out of fear of losing them, out of love. He didn't answer, but she could see the war waging behind his eyes. The next morning, Maya woke to find a manila envelope slid under her bedroom door. Inside were copies of the custody papers, notes from Garrett's lawyer, a handwritten message in his script. You said I needed to show up. This is me trying. Maya held the note for a long time. Downstairs, she heard the boys laughing. It was a sound she knew wouldn't last forever, but it was still worth everything. She slipped the papers back into the envelope and tucked it into her dresser. Then she opened a different drawer and pulled out her list. Trevor, Maribel, Jeremiah, Layla, DeAndre, Marcus, Sierra, all names, all stories, some happy, some not. everyone etched into her bones. She found a blank spot at the bottom and added 2 new names, Eli, Evan. Then she wrote next to them, "Still healing, worth staying for." Later that day, Maya gathered the boys in the sunroom. "I need to tell you something," she said, her tone calm but serious. They looked up from their Lego fortress, sensing the shift. "Your mom is back in town," she said, "and she's asked to see you." Eli's face froze. Evan looked away. "She's better now," Maya added. "That's what she says. But it doesn't have to be fast or scary. It'll be up to you and your dad and some grown-ups who care." Eli swallowed. "Will she stay this time?" "I don't know," Maya said truthfully. "But whether she stays or not, your worth doesn't change." Evan whispered, "Do you think she missed us?" "I think she did, in her own way." The twins didn't cry, but they curled into her sides, one on each shoulder, like anchors trying to find their balance again. Maya held them until the sun moved across the floor, until Garrett appeared at the door. He didn't speak, just knelt and opened his arms, and this time, they ran to him. Maybe not with full trust, but with hope, and that was enough for now. The following Sunday arrived with a weight that everyone in the Langston estate could feel. Even the wind seemed to hush around the house. It was the first supervised visit. Garrett had arranged everything by the book: a neutral location, a licensed social worker present, and Maya's quiet blessing in the background. He had offered to go alone with the twins, but Eli had made it clear, if she comes back, she needs to see all of us. So they all went: Garrett, Eli, Evan, and Maya, invited not by court order, but by 2 small hands holding hers before they left. The meeting place was a small children's library uptown. Warm lighting, beanbags scattered like clouds, and murals of animals reading books painted along the walls. There was even a corner labeled Memory Nook, where kids were encouraged to write letters and post them to loved ones living or gone. Veronica was already seated when they arrived. She looked different. Her once flawless, manicured appearance was softer now. Her hair pulled into a simple ponytail, her eyes lighter but ringed with something that hadn't been there before: humility. When she saw the boys, she stood. "Hi," she said, voice cracking with a smile that didn't quite know where to land. "Hi, babies." Neither boy moved at first. Then Evan stepped forward. "We're not babies." Veronica laughed, nervously. "Right. You're big now." Ailey stood back, gripping Maya's hand. "You left." Veronica's smile faltered. "I know. You didn't call." Evan said. "I know," she repeated, her voice thinner now. "I was very sick, and I didn't want to hurt you more." "No." The social worker, seated nearby, gave Maya a quiet nod of reassurance, indicating it was okay for her to stay close. Maya stepped aside, still within sight. Veronica sat on the reading bench and patted the spot beside her. The boys hesitated. Then, slowly, they moved toward her, not because they trusted her again, but because something in their hearts wanted answers. They asked about her new job. She said she worked at a bookstore. They asked about her apartment. She said it was small, but full of sunlight. Then Eli asked the one thing Maya knew would come. "Why didn't you fight for us sooner?" Veronica's breath hitched. "Because I didn't think I deserved to." Evan tilted his head. "Do you now?" Veronica looked at Maya, then Garrett, who stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed but silent. "I'm trying," she said. Maya saw it then, not redemption, not yet, but the beginning of it, the possibility of it. After the visit, back in the car, the boys were quiet. Eli stared out the window. Evan fiddled with the seatbelt. Garrett broke the silence. "You okay?" Ellie didn't turn. "I don't know yet." And that was more honest than anything he'd said in weeks. That night, Maya was in the kitchen drying dishes when Garrett walked in. He leaned against the counter, watching her silently. "You handled that well," he said. "I wasn't the one being tested," she replied, placing a dish back in the rack. "I think you were," he said softly. Maya turned to him. "You don't have to thank me, Garrett. This is what I do." "No," he said. "It's not. You do more than your job. You see them. You protect them." He hesitated. "And you steady me." The air between them stilled. It was the first time he'd let his walls fall, even for a second. She could see it in his eyes, the loneliness, the fear, the small boy who never quite healed. I'm not here to fix you, Maya said, quiet but firm. I know, Garrett replied. I just want to do better. For them, for me, maybe even for you. Maya exhaled slowly. Then start by being consistent. Show up, even when it's hard. Garrett nodded. I will. The next morning, the boys surprised Maya with something new. A note handwritten, carefully folded, and left on her pillow. It read, Maya, we think you're brave, like a knight, but also like a teacher, or like a mom. We don't know what you want to be called, but we love you anyway. There was a crayon drawing below at her, standing with a sword made of kindness, a cape of books, and two small figures beside her holding stars. Maya sat on the bed holding the note. She didn't cry, but she closed her eyes and whispered a single thank you to no one in particular, maybe to the universe. She was only halfway through her 30 days, but it no longer felt like a countdown. It felt like the beginning of something worth keeping. That afternoon, Clara found Maya in the garden, kneeling by the hydrangeas. You're getting under their skin, Clara said, handing her a bottle of water. Is that a good thing? Maya smiled. Clara chuckled. Depends on what they do when you leave. I don't plan to. Clara's eyebrows lifted. You thinking of staying? Maya nodded, brushing dirt from her hands. If they'll have me. They'd beg you if they knew how. Maya looked toward the house, where Garrett stood on the porch, watching her with a softness in his face she hadn't seen before. Something fragile and real. Maybe even hope. Clara followed her gaze and smirked. Careful now. Men like that only fall hard once. Maya's voice was steady. Then he better fall for the right reasons. And with that, she stood, dirt on her knees, sun on her skin, and purpose in her step. The days were still ticking down, but something had shifted in every room, every hallway, every heart. The Langston estate wasn't haunted anymore. It was waking up. It began with a photo, one that wasn't supposed to exist. Garrett found it tucked inside a manila envelope in his office, no return address, no sender. Just a single photograph and a note that read, You don't know who she really island. He stared at the image for a long time. It was grainy, clearly old, but Maya was unmistakable, younger, maybe 17 or 18, standing outside a juvenile detention center, arms crossed, jaw clenched, and eyes that carried the same fire she had now but harder, angrier. And beside her, a boy in handcuffs. Garrett sat down, the breath knocked from him by memory. He didn't want to believe what the note implied, didn't want to question the woman who had rebuilt the emotional architecture of his house in a matter of weeks. But he also couldn't unsee it. Later that evening, Maya found Garrett on the back porch, staring at the garden like he expected it to offer answers. Long day? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. He didn't look at her. Something like that. She sat beside him on the porch steps. The sun was dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the lawn. For a while, neither spoke. Then Garrett reached into his coat pocket and handed her the photo. Maya looked down at it, her expression unreadable. After a long pause, she said, You kept it longer than I expected. You knew it would surface. Eventually. That's how secrets work. They like air. Garrett exhaled. Who's the kid? My brother, she said. Marcus. Garrett's eyes flicked to hers. He's the reason you're in the system? I'm the reason he's not dead. She placed the photo on her lap, smoothing the corners with careful fingers. When I was 15, we were living with a foster family in South Carolina. They had money but no kindness. The man he liked control, especially over kids who couldn't fight back. Garrett clenched his jaw. One night, Marcus stood up to him. The man hit him with a belt. I took a lamp to his head. Garrett looked stunned. Maya shrugged. I don't regret it. What happened? Police came. The man painted it like we were ungrateful, violent. I got 6 months in juvie. Marcus got transferred. I never saw him again. Garrett stared at her. And you still chose to take care of children? I especially chose to, Maya said. Because someone has to show them what love feels like when it isn't transactional. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the leaves overhead. Garrett's voice was softer now. Why didn't you tell me? Because I've learned that people prefer their caretakers clean, polished, redeemed. He didn't deny it. Maya stood, handed the photo back. You can keep it. Frame it, if you want. Remind yourself what survival looks like. She walked back inside, calm, composed, but Garrett could see the tremor in her shoulders. The next day, things felt different. Not broken yet, but paused. Garrett didn't avoid her. He didn't question her parenting, but the warmth between them had cooled, like someone had closed a door in a house full of open windows. The twins noticed. Did Daddy do something wrong? Evan asked as they built Lego towers in the living room. No, Maya said gently. Sometimes adults just need time to think. Eli looked up. Are you going to leave? No, Maya answered, with more certainty than she felt. Later that afternoon, she found herself alone in Veronica's music room, the one she usually avoided. She sat at the piano bench, not touching the keys, just staring at the dust motes dancing in the late afternoon light. Then she spoke quietly, like a prayer. You're not coming back, are you? No one answered, but somehow, the silence agreed. That night, Garrett knocked on her door. She opened it without a word. He stood there for a long moment, then held up something in his hand. It was the picture, but it had been reprinted, placed in a new frame, and set beside another photo one Maya hadn't seen in years. Her holding two small children during a volunteer event at a shelter, both kids smiling, both arms wrapped tightly around her neck. I made a choice, Garrett said, to trust the person in both photos, not just the version I thought I knew. Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. What changed your mind? He hesitated. Eli asked me if I'd ever made a mistake big enough to change someone's life. She stepped aside, letting him into the room. He placed the framed photos on her nightstand. I told him yes, and that I'm still trying to be the man I should have been the first time. Maya turned toward him. Then we're not so different. Garrett nodded slowly. No, we're not. The silence between them this time wasn't heavy. It was full, and when he left, he didn't close the door all the way behind him. The next morning, Eli taped a new drawing to Maya's door. It was her again, same cape, same sword. But this time, she was standing on a bridge between two cliffs. On one side were the boys, on the other, Veronica and Garrett. And under the bridge, a dark ravine with the words, "Past stuff," scribbled inside. Maya laughed out loud, and for the first time in days, her laugh echoed through the house. Garrett, reading a spreadsheet in the study, heard it, and smiled. It was a Tuesday when the letter arrived. Unlike the usual white envelopes that came through the Langston mailbox bills, legal notices, donations, it was black. Not just the ink. The envelope itself. Smooth matte, almost like velvet. Maya found it wedged between a magazine and a flyer about a local charity gala. Her name was handwritten on the front, Maya William. No return address. She stared at it for a long moment, fingers hovering over the seal. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she tucked it into her cardigan pocket and walked the long path back to the house. The gravel crunching beneath her feet. Her thoughts heavy with a familiarity she hadn't felt in years. That kind of envelope only meant one thing in her world. Someone from the past had decided to knock. Later that evening, after dinner was cleared and Garrett was in a video call upstairs, Maya stepped onto the back porch alone. The boys were busy watching an animated movie with Clara in the living room, their laughter drifting faintly through the open windows. She sat down on the swing bench and finally opened the envelope. There were only 2 items inside, a small photograph and a single sheet of paper with a short message scrawled in red ink. The photo showed Marcus, her brother, older now, his face more angular, his dreadlocks longer, but still unmistakably him. He stood beside a man Maya didn't recognize, both of them wearing dark jackets and standing in front of what looked like a warehouse. The note said, "He never left the life, and he knows where you are." Maya's breath caught. She clutched the letter tight, eyes darting to the shadows beyond the garden. There was nothing there, just darkness and wind, and the occasional blink of a firefly. But the message had done its job. It had opened a wound. Later that night, she stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in warm water, scrubbing dishes she'd already cleaned twice. Garrett entered, wearing a quiet look of concern. "You've washed that plate 3 times, he said. Maya didn't look up, just thinking. About the photo? She froze. He held up his hands. "You dropped the envelope near the mailbox. I saw what was inside before I gave it to you." She turned slowly, eyes sharp. "You opened it?" I had to be sure it wasn't a threat. She stepped back, the heat rising in her chest. It is a threat, but not to you. Garrett took a careful step forward. Then to who? To me. Her voice cracked, not with anger, but with weariness. My brother, Marcus. I don't know what he's mixed up in now. But if he's back, it's not because he wants a family reunion. Garrett exhaled. You think he'll come here? Maya looked toward the windows, like she could see through the trees into the future. He's not the same kid who cried when they separated us. If someone's sending photos, it means they want me to be afraid. Garrett crossed his arms, jaw tight. Then we prepare. She turned back to him. How? He looked her dead in the eye. You're not alone anymore. And that, more than anything, made her want to crumble. The next day, Garrett met with his private security team. Increased patrols. New surveillance at the estate perimeter. Facial recognition updates. The guards were instructed not to interfere unless instructed. Maya's past wasn't a crime, but the shadows trailing her might be. Meanwhile, Maya took the twins on an outing to the local botanical gardens. She didn't want them to feel the shift, didn't want them to see her scanning every face, every corner. Can we get ice cream after? Evan asked, tugging her sleeve. Sure, Maya said, smiling as best she could. Double scoops. But when she went to pay, her card was declined. She tried again. Same result. And she knew she'd just checked the balance that morning. There was no reason, unless someone had tampered with her account. She used cash and kept her face calm for the boys, but her mind raced. Back at the estate, she pulled up her bank account. It was locked. A message flashed on the screen. Account suspended due to security concerns. Please contact your branch. Maya sat back, pulse rising. This was coordinated, calculated. Someone wasn't just trying to scare her. They were trying to erase her. That evening, Garrett found her in the garage, checking the locks on her car. Any luck with the bank? He asked. Maya shook her head. They said someone tried to transfer funds overseas. Flagged it as fraud. I have to go in person tomorrow. No. He leaned against the wall, watching her with quiet intensity. You think it's your brother? I don't know, she admitted. But someone wants me unstable. He stepped closer. You don't have to face this alone. She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time, allowed herself to lean slightly toward him, not enough to fall, but enough to share weight. I've always handled things myself, she whispered. Then let this be the first thing you don't have to. And in that fragile moment, Maya felt the line between protector and protected blur. Later that night, Maya found another drawing taped to her bedroom mirror. It wasn't from the boys. This one was different. Messy, jagged. A stick figure version of her, alone, standing under a storm cloud. 3 X's scratched over her heart. No name, no signature, just another message. And this time, it wasn't from a ghost. It was from someone very much alive. Watching, closer than she had dared to believe. Wednesday morning dawned with a nervous stillness. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel earned, like something had been held back overnight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maya woke early, too early, her mind replaying the drawing on her mirror. She had burned it in the fireplace last night, watching the paper curl and blacken. But even in ashes, the image stayed with her, 3 red X's over her heart. A message from someone who knew where she slept. Garrett insisted she take the day off. We'll reschedule the boys' therapy, he said, standing in the kitchen, dressed down in a soft gray sweater and jeans. You don't need to leave the house today. I need to go to the bank, Maya said firmly. I'll send Martin with you. I'm not a prisoner, she shot back, more sharply than she meant. Garrett stepped back, hands raised. I didn't mean it that way. I just want you safe. She softened. I know, but if I don't face this now, I never will. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Then I'll drive. The drive into town was quiet. The air in Garrett's SUV was thick with the weight of unsaid things. Maya watched the trees pass, one after another, bare branches like arms reaching for answers no one had. I can't decide what's worse, she finally said, that this is Marcus, or that it isn't. Garrett glanced at her. What do you mean? If it's him, at least there's a face, a motive, something to hold on to. If it's not, then I have no idea who's doing this, or why. Garrett didn't answer. He simply reached over and squeezed her hand once. The gesture was quiet but grounding. The bank was housed in a modern glass building in the heart of the city. Maya walked in with Garrett a step behind her. She met with the branch manager, a serious woman with steel gray hair and a calm, clinical tone. Your account was flagged due to multiple failed login attempts from an international IP address, she explained. Then someone used your personal information to initiate a wire transfer of $8,400. Maya frowned. To where? An account in Panama. It was blocked immediately, but the attempt was highly sophisticated. They knew your full social, your mother's maiden name, even your last 3 addresses. Maya's blood ran cold. Garrett leaned in. Can we trace who tried to access it? The manager shook her head. We've turned it over to the cyber division, but unless they slip up again, it'll be difficult. When they left the bank, Maya's nerves were frayed. As they crossed the street toward the parking garage, she caught movement in her periphery. A man, standing on the corner, blue hoodie, head down, hands in his pockets. He wasn't doing anything, just standing. But Maya's breath caught. Garrett noticed. What is it? The guy in the hoodie. I saw him outside the grocery store last week. Garrett tensed. Stay here. He stepped off the curb, crossing toward the man. But by the time he reached the spot, he was gone. Disappeared into the crowd, like a shadow slipping behind a closing door. Back at the estate, Maya spent the afternoon pacing the garden path. The boys were with Clara, learning how to bake banana bread. Garrett was on the phone with a private investigator he trusted from his venture capital days. Maya was alone, and her past was no longer behind her, it was circling. She walked past the hydrangeas, past the bench where she first sat with the boys, past the small herb garden Evan had helped her plant just 2 weeks ago. She stopped near the fence line and knelt down. From the dirt, she pulled out a tiny metal box she'd buried years ago, a habit born from years in foster homes and shelters, where nothing was safe unless hidden. Inside were 3 things. A photo of Marcus as a child, smiling with missing teeth. A key to a mailbox in Charleston she hadn't used since she was 19. A folded letter she'd written to herself the day she left juvie. She read it again now, the paper worn, the ink smudged. You are not your mistakes. You are not your record. You are not what they said you'd be. But you have to be ready. Because one day, the world will try to remind you anyway. Tears burned her eyes. It was time. That night, she told Garrett everything. About the foster homes, the group fights, the judge who gave her one last chance, the counselor who paid for her GED. The night Marcus disappeared from the system. I looked for him, she said, for years, but there was always another closed file, another locked door, and then I got a call from someone who said he didn't want to be found. Garrett sat across from her in the study, silent but listening. I tried to build a life, she continued. Not perfect, but clean, honest. And now, someone wants to burn it down. Garrett spoke for the first time. We won't let them. She met his gaze. It may not be just me they're after. He frowned. You think the boys are in danger? I think whoever this is knows I care about them, and that makes them vulnerable. Garrett's expression hardened. Then we double down on security. Pull the twins from school this week. And you, don't ask me to run. I wasn't going to. He stood. I was going to ask you to fight. Before bed, Maya found another envelope taped to her bathroom mirror. This time, it was white. Inside, a note. The bridge only holds if the weight stays balanced. Start choosing who to save. Her fingers trembled. She looked at her reflection, tired, scared, but standing. Then she took the note, walked to the fireplace, and watched it burn. The bridge would hold, because she would carry the weight, even if she had to walk alone into the fire. It was nearly midnight when the dogs started barking. Not one bark, not 2. A frantic, relentless chorus that echoed across the Langston estate, bouncing off the stone walls like a warning bell no one could ignore. Maya shot up from her bed, heart pounding. She'd been dozing on top of the covers, fully clothed, unable to fall into real sleep since the envelope appeared on her mirror. She rushed to the window, pulling the curtain aside with one sharp motion. Outside, the motion sensor lights blazed white across the courtyard. 2 men. One near the north gate, another further back by the greenhouse. Both in dark hoodies, faces obscured. One held what looked like a crowbar, the other something worse, maybe a knife, maybe a pipe. Maya's breath hitched. They weren't trying to be subtle. They were making a statement. She bolted into the hallway, her bare feet slapping against the wood floor. "Garrett!" she yelled, banging on his door. It flew open instantly. He was already dressed, gun in hand, eyes sharp with military precision. "North Gate," she said. "Two of them. I'll handle it. Lock the boys in their room. Stay with them. Don't open the door for anyone but me." Maya didn't argue. She ran. Eli and Evan were still asleep when she entered, but the dogs barking had them stirring. She shut the door quietly, then locked it behind her. She turned on the lamp by the bed and gently shook them awake. "Hey, sweethearts, I need you to come with me." Evan rubbed his eyes. "Is it morning?" "No, baby. We're just going to play our superhero game, remember?" That was their code. Anytime something felt off, Maya had taught them to treat it like a mission. Stay quiet. Follow instructions. Protect each other. Eli sat up straighter, already alert. "Someone's here?" Maya nodded. "But Daddy's handling it. We just stay safe, okay?" She pulled them into the walk-in closet, a converted storm shelter, reinforced, stocked with snacks, flashlights, and blankets. They climbed in without a word, huddling together. She crouched beside them, listening. Outside the window, the dogs were going wild. Then came the sound of tires on gravel, a short screech, then silence. Had they left? Or had something worse happened? Garrett moved like a machine. By the time he reached the courtyard, the first man had already tried prying open the garden gate. Garrett raised his voice. "Hands, where I can see them." The man turned slow, deliberate, unafraid. Garrett's stomach dropped. He knew that look. This wasn't just a break-in. It was a message. The second man appeared from the side path. Garrett held steady, weapon raised. "You're trespassing on private property. Law enforcement is en route." Neither man flinched. The one with the crowbar spoke. "We just came to say hello. Drop it, now." Instead, he stepped forward. Garrett fired a warning shot into the air. That got their attention. The two men turned and bolted through the trees just as headlights from the estate's security team tore down the driveway. The guards jumped out, guns drawn, flashlights cutting through the darkness. But the intruders were fast, melting into the woods. Garrett lowered his weapon, hands shaking not from fear, but from fury. Whoever they were, they knew the grounds. They knew when to strike. And they knew Garrett's limits. They hadn't come to rob. They'd come to test the line. By morning, police tape lined the outer gate, and detectives were reviewing the security footage. Maya sat at the kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. Clara hovered nearby, pale with worry, holding the boys in the living room, trying to keep their routines normal. Garrett paced in front of the windows, phone glued to his ear. "Find me a name," he barked. "I want every face run through the database. If they've got records, I want them in my inbox by noon." He hung up and turned to Maya. "You okay?" She nodded. "The boys are fine." Closet held up. They even cracked a joke. Garrett gave a tight smile. "That's your doing." She looked away. "They wanted me to pick. That's what the note said. Choose who to save. It's escalating, Garrett." "I know." She stood, jaw clenched. "This ends now." That afternoon, Maya did something she hadn't done in a decade. She went back to Charleston. Not for nostalgia, not for closure. For Marcus. She'd called an old contact, Miss Connie, who used to run the transitional housing program where Maya stayed after juvie. Now in her late 60s, Connie still had a memory sharper than most. "I haven't seen him in years," she said over the phone, "but someone said he's been floating around Pier 11, dock work, odd jobs, keeps to himself." So Maya went. The docks were loud and hot, filled with the stink of diesel and seaweed. She walked past shipping containers and rusting cranes, looking for the shape of a man she only remembered as a boy. Then she saw him, older, thinner, covered in tattoos. His dreadlocks were shorter now, pulled back in a messy tie. He was loading a truck, head down, moving like someone who didn't want to be noticed. "Marcus," she said. He froze, turned, and smiled, but it wasn't warmth. It was recognition and guilt. "Well, damn," he said. "Thought you were a ghost." You sent men to my house. He laughed bitterly. You think I'd send amateurs like that? Please. Then who? His smile faded. You're not the only one who made enemies, sis. People I used to run with, they remember you. Remember the fire you started. They don't like loose ends. You didn't warn me. I didn't know, Maya. Not until they started looking into my past. And guess who pops up? The righteous sister, who vanished and made a clean life. She took a step forward. You're in danger too. He looked away. Yeah. But I deserve it. Maya shook her head. No, no one deserves this. Marcus exhaled hard. They won't stop. They think you still got something. Something you saw. Something they can't let live. I didn't see anything. They don't believe that. Silence stretched between them. Then Marcus said, You want to end this? Yes. Then you need to find the man with the scar above his lip. Name's Dante. He's the one sending the letters. Maya swallowed hard. Where is he? Marcus looked around, then leaned in. He's already close. Real close. Check who you let in. And just like that, he turned and disappeared behind a stack of crates. Maya stood alone, heart pounding. She had a name now. And maybe a traitor inside her gates. Maya drove home from Charleston in a fog, her fingers gripping the steering wheel tighter with every mile. Dante. A name, finally. A shape to the threat that had haunted her family like a ghost in the walls. But Marcus's final words haunted her even more. Check who you let in. It echoed like a curse. Could someone already inside the estate, inside their lives, be working against them? As the gates to the Langston property opened, she scanned the guards, the house staff on the lawn, even Clara on the porch, waving gently as if nothing had happened the night before. Everything looked the same, and that was the problem. Too calm, too ordinary. She parked, climbed out slowly, and offered Clara a tired smile. Where are the boys? Inside with Garrett. They're making a fort out of couch cushions. Maya's chest ached with a strange mix of dread and warmth. They were safe for now. She stepped into the house, nodding to Martin, Garrett's security lead, who stood stationed by the front door. His face was unreadable, military-trained, always controlled. But Maya's gaze lingered on his upper lip. No scar. She moved on. Garrett was in the living room with the boys, helping them build a cardboard spaceship with colored tape and tinfoil. Maya watched from the hallway a moment, the scene surreal in its simplicity. For a second, she let herself breathe. Then she saw it. When Garrett bent down, his sweater lifted just enough to reveal a thin scar angled, just below his ribcage. Not on the lip, but still, a scar. Her stomach twisted. Was she losing trust, or just trying to hold on to something solid in a world unraveling? Garrett looked up and saw her. Hey, everything okay? She forced a smile. Can I talk to you? Privately? He nodded, told the boys he'd be right back, and followed her into the kitchen. Maya waited until the door closed. I spoke to Marcus, she said. Garrett blinked, surprised. Where? Charleston. He says the man behind all this is named Dante. He's got a scar above his lip. And he's close. Maybe already inside. Garrett's jaw clenched. He gave you a name. That's something. Do you know anyone named Dante? Someone who's had access to this house or the grounds? Garrett frowned, thinking. No one on staff. But I can run it through the vendor logs. Contractors, drivers, even catering crews. We'll cross-check every name. Maya hesitated. He also said, I need to watch who I let in. Garrett met her gaze. You think it's someone I trust? I don't want to think that, she said quietly, but I can't rule it out. He nodded slowly. We'll find him, Maya. And when we do, this ends. That evening, Maya went to the surveillance room for the first time. Martin let her in without a word, though his eyes followed her with suspicion. The room was cold, filled with monitors showing every angle of the estate. She stood beside the wall of screens, arms crossed. I want to see the footage from last night, the break-in, she said. Martin didn't flinch. Already reviewed. Nothing helpful. Faces were covered. Still, show me. He queued it up. The screens flickered, showing the two men outside the gate, approaching the house, moving through the garden path. Maya watched closely how they moved, how they communicated. "Pause there," she said suddenly. Martin stopped the video. One of the men slightly shorter had pulled something from his jacket. It wasn't a weapon, it was a phone. "Zoom in," Maya instructed. The image sharpened slightly. The man was holding the phone up, not just using it, but pointing it like he was recording. "Why would they film themselves?" she murmured. Martin frowned. They weren't filming themselves. They were filming the house. Maya's blood ran cold. They weren't just sending a message. They were scouting. For someone else. Martin nodded grimly, and whoever they were sending it to already knew where to look. Later that night, Maya returned to her room to find a package on her bed, unmarked. No postage. Just sitting there. Her heart sized. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a child's toy. A broken slinky, rusted, tangled beyond repair. And a note. "Still playing games, Maya? This time, the spring won't bounce back." She sat down slowly, gripping the edge of the bed, bile rising in her throat. The slinky wasn't just a toy. It was the toy. The one she and Marcus shared when they were moved between foster homes. The one she kept in a memory box she knew had been locked in her closet until this morning. Someone had been in her room. Today, the next morning, Maya met with Clara in the garden. They sat under the gazebo, sunlight casting soft shadows through the lattice. "I need to ask you something," Maya said carefully. Clara looked up from her knitting. "Of course. Do you remember any new vendors or contractors from the last month? Anyone who came around just once?" Clara thought for a moment. "Well, there was that landscaping crew. But they've been around for years. And we had a new IT guy last week. Young, polite, came to fix the server in the security room, said his name was Dante." Maya's breath hitched. "Did he have a scar?" Clara frowned. "Yes. Actually. Right here." She motioned to her upper lip. "I remember thinking it looked like a burn mark." Maya stood up instantly. "When was this?" 3 days ago. He was only here for an hour. Said he needed to run a diagnostic sweep, then left. Why? What's wrong?" Maya's heart thudded in her chest. "He's not from IT." Clara went pale. Maya pulled out her phone and called Garrett. "We found him," she said the moment he answered. "Dante was here, posing as tech support." "I'm on my way," Garrett said. Maya looked out at the long gravel path stretching toward the main gate. Dante had been inside. He'd touched their systems. He might still be watching. And now that they had his name, he'd know the clock was ticking. Only this time, it was ticking for him. Garrett arrived within 15 minutes. His SUV skidded to a sharp stop in the gravel courtyard, and he stepped out already barking into his Bluetooth headset, issuing orders to lock down the estate. His eyes scanned Maya from head to toe as he approached. "Are you okay?" She nodded. Clara just confirmed that Dante was here. He accessed the security server. Garrett's jaw tightened. "We're shutting down the entire system, replacing hardware, full sweep for bugs." "He walked through this house," Maya said, voice low but steely. "Watched my boys. Probably touched their toys. Looked at photos. And we let him in." "Not anymore," Garrett growled. He turned to Martin, who had joined them by the porch. "I want every second of footage from that day reviewed. If the system's compromised, we rebuild it from scratch. Get Marcus on the line, too. If Dante's running with his old crew, I want names, faces, known associates." Martin gave a brisk nod and vanished back into the house. Maya followed Garrett inside. The estate felt colder now, like Dante's brief presence had soaked into the walls. As they entered the security room, Garrett keyed in his override code. The screen blinked to life. Maya could see her own face appear briefly footage from a hallway 2 days ago. "He rewired this," she said. "If he accessed the mainframe, he probably left something behind." Garrett motioned toward a wiry man entering behind them, Elliot, his personal tech consultant, who had flown in from DC overnight. "Elliot's going to check for digital breadcrumbs." Elliot cracked his knuckles and went to work without a word, his fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard. Within minutes, he frowned. "This system's been tampered with. Not just backdoors, he installed a Trojan. Something smart. It shadows real footage with loops 10 to 15-second delays. You'd never know unless you were watching for it. Classique surveillance disruption technique. Is he still in the system? Maya asked. Elliot hesitated. Hard to say. But if he is, he can see us. Maya crossed her arms, her voice a whisper. He could be watching right now. Garrett moved to the camera on the wall and yanked the power cord from the wall. The screen went dark. No more eyes, he said. Elliot nodded. I'll isolate the drive and start scrubbing. As Maya turned to leave the room, she stopped cold. There, taped to the inside of the server cabinet, just barely visible behind a nest of wires, was a scrap of paper. She reached in carefully and pulled it free. One word was written in thick, block letters. Closer. They spent the next 2 hours checking every inch of the house. Maya followed behind the tech team as they opened panel boxes, removed vent covers, searched behind picture frames. Nothing else turned up, but the damage had been done. The idea that Dante could slip in and out unnoticed, impersonate a worker, manipulate the cameras, leave a note within arm's reach of their most protected systems was proof of one thing. He wasn't just trying to intimidate them. He was building toward something, a final move, and they were running out of time to stop it. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay awake in the guest bedroom she'd moved to farther from the boys' room, closer to the stairs, easier to respond if something went wrong. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind brush against the windows. At 2:13 a.m., she heard a sound. Click. A soft, deliberate sound. Not from inside the house, but just outside her window. She slid out of bed, barefoot, heart pounding. Careful not to turn on the light, she crept toward the curtain and parted it just enough to peek through. A figure stood on the lawn, still, silent, looking straight up at her window. The moonlight glinted off something in his hand, a phone, or maybe a remote. He lifted his free hand and pointed it at her. Not waving, not gesturing, just pointing. Maya didn't scream. She stepped back, forcing her breath to slow. He wants a reaction. She knew it. Instead, she moved quickly through the hallway, heart thundering, down the back stairwell. By the time she reached the lawn, the figure was gone. Only footprints remained in the dew-covered grass, leading not away from the house, but around it. She followed them. They led to the east wing, where the twins' bedrooms were. Maya broke into a run. She threw open the door to the boys' room, both still sleeping, safe, their little chests rising and falling steadily beneath dinosaur-patterned blankets. She closed the door and leaned against it, a sob threatening to escape her throat. Dante had been just outside. So why hadn't he made his move? What was he waiting for? In the morning, Garrett gathered the house staff in the dining room. Clara, Martin, the housekeepers, the chef, 2 landscapers, every person with access to the property. We've had a breach, Garrett said, his voice level but cold. The intruder posed as a contractor and manipulated our systems. No one enters this house without being personally vetted by either Maya or myself. Is that understood? There were murmurs of agreement. Martin scanned the group. From now on, anyone who sets foot inside wears a tracker and logs every movement. Maya stepped forward. And if anyone here has any knowledge about a man named Dante, scar above his lip, early 30s, light skin, you need to speak now. Silence. No one moved, but Maya caught it a flicker. In the eyes of the new gardener, Ben, young, quiet, always kept to himself. He looked down just a second too late. She locked eyes with him, and in that instant, she knew. After the meeting dispersed, she approached him casually near the side patio. You've been quiet today, she said. He shrugged. Just tired. Funny, she said. You're not on the official payroll. You're not on the backup list. And yet, you've been here 3 weeks. He didn't respond. Then, slowly, he smiled, and that smile twisted. Closer than you thought, huh? Maya stepped back, adrenaline flooding her veins. Ben's eyes gleamed. Tell your rich boyfriend. He's already lost. Then he turned and sprinted, but Martin was already there. He tackled Ben to the ground in seconds, pinning him hard. Garrett appeared a moment later, gun drawn, voice sharp. Don't move. Ben laughed as they restrained him. You think I'm the threat? I'm just the warning. Maya stood frozen, heart racing. If Ben was the warning, then who was the real threat? Ben was dragged into the estate's underground holding room, a former wine cellar that Garrett had repurposed years ago into a fortified panic space. Thick steel door, soundproof walls, one tiny observation window. No way in or out without Garrett's code. Maya stood outside that door for a long time, listening. No sounds escaped. Just silence. That, somehow, was worse than screams. Inside, Garrett and Martin were interrogating him slow, methodical. Not just for facts, for pressure points. A truth pried loose in the right moment could prevent something unspeakable. Maya walked into the boys' playroom, where Eli and Evan were working on a Lego rocket. She kneeled beside them, brushing Evan's hair off his forehead. "You boys doing okay?" Eli looked up, serious beyond his years. "Is that man going to hurt us?" "No," Maya said softly. "He won't hurt anyone again." But he smiled like he knew a secret, Evan whispered. Maya froze. Garrett had told her the same thing once. "They don't look like monsters. They smile like friends who know more than you do." "Don't worry," she told them. "That's the smile people make when they know they've already lost." 3 hours later, Maya stood across from Ben in the cellar. He sat shackled to a steel chair, breathing steadily. Not a scratch on him. Garrett had kept things clean, but Maya could feel the tension in the room, something in Ben's stillness that wasn't calm, but calculated. She didn't speak at first, just watched him. Finally, he said, "You're prettier in person. Flattery's not going to buy you freedom." He chuckled. "Freedom's boring. I want purpose." Maya leaned against the wall. "So that's what this is? Purpose? Threatening children?" His expression didn't change. "You still think the kids are the target?" Maya stiffened. "Aren't they?" Ben's smile widened. "The boys are just leverage. You're the real threat. You were always the real threat." "Zero." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because you're not afraid to burn everything down. That makes people like Dante nervous." She walked closer. "Where is Dante now?" Ben shrugged. "By now? Probably sitting in a room full of wires, watching you through 1,000 fake eyes. He's not coming to the front door again, Maya. He's already inside." She narrowed her eyes. "You mean the server?" He laughed. "I mean you. Your doubt, your guilt, your inability to walk away." Maya folded her arms. "That's not fear, Ben, that's resolve." "Funny," he whispered. "They looked the same right before the fall." Maya turned away. She didn't need more riddles. She needed answers. She needed action. Later that night, as Garrett and the tech team rebuilt the network system from the ground up, Maya returned to her own room. The lights were already on strange. She always turned them off. She stepped inside cautiously. Then she saw it. On her pillow sat a flash drive. New note, new box. Just a single black drive, placed with care. Her breath caught in her chest. She picked it up using a tissue, hands shaking, and rushed to the offline laptop. Garrett had provided a system not connected to the estate's grid. She inserted the drive. A folder appeared. Tapes. Inside were video files, dozens of them, each labeled with a timestamp. She opened the first. It was grainy but clear enough. Her, in the garden, weeks ago, laughing with the twins. A second file showed her asleep, curled on the couch with Evan beside her. Another, her undressing. Vulnerable. Unaware. Her skin crawled. They weren't just watching. They were collecting. She kept scrolling until she found a folder marked Vault. One video. She hesitated, then clicked play. The screen flickered to life. And there he was. Don't. Sitting in a small, dimly lit room, a scar above his lip, light eyes calm and cold. He leaned toward the camera. "Hello, Maya," he said, voice low, intimate. "Don't worry, this isn't live. You're not being watched right now this second. But you have been. For months. Maybe longer. It's hard to say." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "You're probably wondering why. The answer's simple. You made people uncomfortable. People who like their secrets buried, not rescued from fires. People who paid good money to erase things, and here you are, dragging them back into daylight." Maya's pulse thundered in her ears. Dante smiled faintly. "But it's not about punishing you anymore. It's about replacing you. And now, I have everything I need. Your patterns, your voice, your face. He leaned closer again. Let's see what happens when people think you're not who you say you are. Let's see what they believe. When I speak with your voice. The screen went black. Maya sat frozen. He wasn't just trying to scare her. He was setting her up, framing her. Garrett burst into the room minutes later after Maya called him. He watched the footage in silence. When it ended, he looked at her grimly. He's building a deepfake profile, voice synthesis, maybe even using AI to recreate your behavior. He wants to discredit me, Maya said. Maybe worse. Garrett nodded. If he convinces someone in law enforcement or press that you're the threat, they'll stop listening to you. Maya clenched her fists. He's trying to erase me. No, Garrett said. He's trying to turn you into the villain of your own story. She met his eyes. Then we need to tell the story ourselves. Loud and true. The next morning, Maya called in a favor she'd hoped never to use. A former social worker named Teresa Bell, now a nationally recognized advocate for children in foster care, someone with deep ties in both media and politics. Maya had worked with her on a case years ago. Teresa owed her, and Maya never called in that debt. Until now. They met in a diner off Route 17. No press, no suits, just two women with history and urgency between them. Maya laid it all out, the tapes, the break-ins, the threat against the boys, the setup. When she finished, Teresa leaned back and said, "So, let me get this straight. Someone is trying to digitally erase your reputation, turn your image into a weapon, and use your past to destroy your present?" Maya nodded. Teresa smiled slowly. "Then it's time you remind the world who you really are." "How?" "You don't hide. You speak. You go public. Controlled. Strategic. But loud. And with me beside you." Maya swallowed. "What if that puts the boys in more danger?" Teresa leaned forward. "The only thing more dangerous than telling the truth is letting someone else tell it for you." Maya stared at her hands, then nodded. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for her voice, and she would not be silenced. The Langston estate never looked more picturesque. The sprawling lawn was trimmed to perfection, sun casting a warm amber light across the veranda. Birds chirped, a breeze danced through the trees. But inside the house, tension hung like storm clouds. Garrett stood near the foyer, arms crossed, his phone buzzing every few seconds. Maya paced in the living room, her eyes flicking toward the hallway every few seconds as if expecting someone to appear. Teresa Bell would be there any minute with a camera crew. Going public was a risk, but it was the only move they had left. Dante was trying to shape the narrative first, twist Maya's image into something sinister. If they stayed quiet, the world would only hear his version. But if Maya spoke first, authentically, without polish or handlers, maybe just maybe they could shift the tide. "Maya," Garrett said from the entryway. "They're here." Ugh. She took a deep breath, smoothed her blouse, and walked out to meet them. Teresa stood at the front of the group, wearing a navy suit with no-nonsense shoes and a face that could command senators. Behind her, a small camera team moved with practiced ease, respectful, quiet, professionals. Teresa greeted Maya with a tight but warm hug. "I hope you're ready," she whispered. "Because once we start, there's no turning back." "I'm ready," Maya said. Garrett stepped in. "The broadcast will be live on 3 networks. We've secured the feed through a firewall. No tampering. We'll also back it up locally, in case someone tries to take it down." Teresa nodded. "Good." Within 15 minutes, the team had set up the living room. One camera on Maya. One wide shot to capture the warmth of the home behind her. No podium. No notes. Just Maya, sitting in an armchair, framed by books and soft light. She looked like someone's daughter, someone's neighbor, not someone to be feared. That was intentional. A tech gave a soft count. "In 3, 2, 1, you're live." Maya looked into the lens. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. "My name is Maya William," she began, her voice steady but full. "I'm a private caretaker, an advocate for children, and for the past 6 months, I've been working inside the home of Garrett Langston and his 2 sons." She paused. "There are people powerful, invisible people who are trying to erase me. They've hacked into this home, manipulated footage, sent threats. Why? Because I witnessed something years ago they never wanted brought to light. And now, they're trying to destroy everything I care about. She leaned slightly forward. I'm not a politician. I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who refuses to let lies become the truth. The camera stayed on her face. Strong, human, honest. If something happens to me, or to Garrett, or to these children, let this recording stand as a warning. The man behind this has a name. Dante. Scar above his lip. Early 30s. He's infiltrated tech systems, impersonated contractors, manipulated data. He is not a ghost. He is real. And now, you know he exists. Her hands trembled slightly. She didn't hide it. You deserve to know the truth. And we deserve to be safe. She looked off camera, then back into the lens. Thank you. Dash. The crew gave the cut signal. Silence. Teresa crossed the room and squeezed Maya's shoulder. You nailed it. But Maya didn't smile. It's not over. Garrett stepped in, phone in hand. The video is already being shared. Trending on 2 platforms. Comments are pouring in. But, he hesitated. But what? We just received a new message. Anonymous upload to the house server. Encrypted, but flagged immediately. He handed the phone to Maya. It was a video. The screen flickered. And once again, Dante appeared calm, smooth, seated in the same nondescript room. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood someone Maya hadn't seen in years. Her cousin Alonzo, bound, gagged, eyes wide with terror. Maya's breath caught. No, Dante leaned forward. You're not the only one with family, Maya. You think going public will scare me? No, it just makes the game more fun. He smiled. You tell your truth. I'll tell mine. The screen went black. Maya stared at the phone in her hands. Garrett said nothing. Teresa's face darkened. Who is that man? My cousin, Maya whispered. We haven't spoken in over a decade. He disappeared. I assumed he was just lost to the system. But Dante, he found him. She stood suddenly, her legs unsteady. He's escalating. Yes, Garrett said, because you hit a nerve. Teresa stepped forward. We need to alert the FBI. Today. This is no longer just harassment. This is terrorism. Garrett looked at Maya. Are you ready for that? Federal involvement means exposure. Real exposure. Maya nodded slowly. He thinks he can use my past to shame me. But I've lived through worse than his games. And now, people are watching. She turned to Teresa. Make the call. By sunset, 2 FBI agents were on site. Special Agent Lena Carter and Agent Devin Moss. Carter was tall, sharp-eyed, a woman who looked like she slept in blazer jackets and didn't blink often. Moss was quieter, younger, but alert. They set up in the study, reviewing footage, listening to Garrett's account, cataloging the digital threats. What about the man in the video? Carter asked Maya. My cousin, Alonzo Reed. He vanished 12 years ago. I think Dante tracked him down to manipulate me. And why would he go to such lengths? Maya met her eyes. Because he wants me to stop digging, to stop remembering. Moss frowned. Remembering what? Maya hesitated. Then, when I was a teenager, I lived in a group home funded by a now defunct nonprofit. But that home wasn't just a shelter. It was a front. Children were sold. Undocumented kids vanished. I told a social worker. A few months later, she was in a car accident. Carter's eyes narrowed. You think it was a hit? I think it was a message. I've been trying to piece it together ever since, but I was just a kid. No one believed me. Garrett stepped in. She's not alone anymore. Carter nodded. We'll dig. But this guy, Dante, he's no amateur. The video you received came through a rotating proxy string. Military-grade encryption. Someone with deep pockets is protecting him. Maya's voice was quiet. Then we expose them, too. Carter glanced at Moss. We'll assign surveillance. Reinforce the perimeter. If he's bold enough to abduct someone and flaunt it, he's likely planning a move. Maya walked to the window. The sky was turning violet, quiet, deceptively calm, but she could feel it. Dante wasn't done, and the storm wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The Langston estate transformed overnight. Surveillance vans parked discreetly across the road. FBI agents rotated through the grounds, their earpieces and sharp suits blending as much as possible into the mansion's polished routine. Still, the boys noticed the change. Eli asked Maya, "Why do those men wear sunglasses at night?" Maya forced a smile. "They're just here to make sure everything's okay." But even at 5, Eli wasn't stupid. He looked at her like he knew. He always knew. In the study, Agent Carter was going through the encrypted drive Dante had dropped. She sat in front of 3 monitors, eyes narrowed behind rimless glasses. Maya stood nearby, arms crossed. "Anything?" "Yes," Carter said, "and it's worse than we thought." She clicked play on one of the recovered audio files. A voice, female, trembling, echoed from the speakers. "They told me if I ever spoke about the Langston Foundation's other books, they'd find me. They said no one would believe a girl like me anyway." Maya's stomach dropped. "That's from the group home." Carter nodded. "A confession. Spliced. Someone tried to hide it under layers of corrupted data. But here's the real kicker." She pulled up an image. An old, yellowed scan of a ledger. "These are financial records. Payments to consultants' names redacted, of course, but all tied to that same defunct nonprofit you mentioned." Maya leaned closer. "Garrett's father's name isn't on there, is it?" "No," Carter said, "but several Langston Holdings shell companies are. And a pattern is emerging. Money moving in loops, dead-end accounts, classic laundering." Garrett entered then, holding a tablet. "The footage just got leaked," he said grimly. "The part where Maya says Dante's name already re-edited and twisted by troll accounts. They've cut it to make her sound paranoid, conspiratorial." Maya took the tablet. Thousands of comments. "She's clearly unstable. Caretaker turned media-hungry liar. She's trying to frame someone because of her past." Maya handed it back. "They're trying to make the world doubt me before we even prove the truth." Carter's eyes flashed. "That's because you're close. People only scramble this hard when someone's about to find the truth buried in their backyard." At that moment, Agent Moss stepped in, his face pale. "We've got a ping. Alonzo's phone just went live for 3 minutes. GPS triangulated it to a facility 10 miles south, near an old textile mill. Then it went dark." "That could be the holding location," Carter said. "Or a false breadcrumb," Garrett warned. "If Dante knows we're tracking, this could be bait." Maya's voice cut through. "I'm going. If my cousin is there, I'm not sitting this out." Carter stared at her. "It's a risk." "So is waiting," Maya said. "We move now." The convoy moved quietly at twilight. 3 black SUVs. 1 van carrying tactical equipment. Moss and Carter led the operation. Flanked by a tactical FBI team, Maya rode in the back seat with Garrett, who loaded a pistol into the hidden compartment beneath his jacket. "You trust them?" Maya asked quietly. "No," Garrett said. "But I trust you." "Man." They arrived near the edge of the property, an abandoned complex of brick and metal, crumbling under decades of neglect. The textile mill looked like a forgotten skeleton in the woods. No lights. No movement. Just silence. Maya stepped out and scanned the tree line. A memory flickered, being dragged through a back hallway as a teen. Her cousin Alonzo screaming somewhere behind her. A door slamming. The sharp smell of bleach. And then nothing. Agent Carter signaled to the team. "We move in silent. 2 entry points. Moss and Langston take rear. Maya, with me. We breach in 3. The clock ticked. Then movement. They entered fast. Inside, the mill was hollow, filled with the ghosts of machines and the stink of rust. Echoes bounced off the walls. Carter moved like a blade, slicing through the darkness. Moss checked rooms, signaling clear each time. Maya's flashlight caught something, a red scarf. Familiar. She picked it up. Alonzo's. She didn't have time to process before Carter hissed, "We've got heat signatures." Maya followed her down a stairwell into a sub-basement. It smelled of mildew and rotting wood. They reached a steel door. Carter raised her hand. Counted down. 3, 2, 1. Boom. They burst in. And there he was, Alonzo, tied to a chair, alive, gagged, blood on his temple, but breathing. Maya rushed forward, dropping to her knees, undoing the ropes. "I got you," she whispered. "You're safe now." Alonzo's eyes filled with tears. He rasped, "He knew you'd come. He said you always come for people." Before Maya could respond, Carter grabbed her arm. "We need to move. Now." "Why?" Then she saw it. A blinking red light on the wall. Silentima. A trap. Carter screamed into her radio. "Get out! Everyone out!" The floor shuddered. Maya yanked Alonzo to his feet, slinging his arm over her shoulder. The world became noise, shouting, feet pounding, metal groaning. Garrett appeared behind them, helping carry Alonzo as Carter led them up the stairs. Smoke followed. Then fire. They reached the surface just as the first explosion roared below. The building shook behind them. They tumbled into the grass as the mill collapsed, fire pouring into the sky. Maya lay on her back, gasping. Alonzo groaned beside her. Alive. Garrett crawled over, hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" She nodded, barely. Carter stood, brushing ash from her coat. That was planned. Not just booby-trapped, calculated. Time to the second. Maya sat up. "He wanted us to find him, but not get out." Alonzo coughed. "There's more." They turned to him. His voice cracked. "There's another house. Not far. That's where he keeps the files. The real ones." Carter's expression hardened. "Coordinates?" Alonzo nodded weakly. "I memorized them. In case she came." He looked at Maya, and for the first time in years, she saw the cousin she remembered. Brave, loyal, alive. She gripped his hand. "We're ending this," she whispered. And this time, she meant it. The safe house was nothing more than a weathered cabin nestled in the shadow of the northern woods, an old hunter's lodge built decades ago, now shrouded by ivy and silence. The coordinates Alonzo gave led them straight to it. Carter, Moss, and the tactical team halted the convoy 2 miles out, hidden beneath the tree line. "No visible surveillance," Carter said, peering through binoculars. "No vehicles. But that doesn't mean it's empty." Maya adjusted the strap on her shoulder holster, her face pale but composed. She hadn't slept since the explosion. Not really. Alonzo was recovering back at the estate under protective watch. The boys were safe, but this was the end of the maze. She could feel it. Garrett approached, holding a map and an earpiece. "We've got satellite backup now. If Dante's still here, he'll know we're coming." "Then let's not disappoint him," Maya said. They moved in, quiet and deliberate. The forest hushed around them, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Branches crunched under boots, radios whispered static. Carter signaled 2 men flanking the east, Moss and Garrett sweeping left. Maya moved with Carter straight to the front. The door was unlocked. That was the first sign. Carter held up a fist. They waited. Nothing. She pushed the door open. Inside, dust motes danced in golden shafts of sunlight. The place smelled of cedar, old smoke, and something faintly metallic. It looked abandoned. A couch sagged under years of disuse. A fireplace, half full of ash, but on the far wall mounted monitors, hard drives stacked like books, a server rack humming faintly. Maya stepped forward slowly. He was here. Garrett walked over to the setup, plugging in a secure USB device from the agency. "Data's still live. This isn't just storage, it's a live feed node. Part of a larger system. Zen. Can we access it?" Carter asked. "I'm trying," he muttered. "There's encryption, of course, but not as heavy as before. Like he wants us to find something." Maya scanned the room. Her eyes landed on a corkboard. Photographs. Red string. Documents. The center image was her standing outside the Langston estate. But around it, other faces. Women. Children. Staff. Journalists. "Oh my God," she breathed. "These are his targets." Garrett looked up. "He's been building a network. Blackmail. Control. Coercion. Each of these people has a file on this drive." Carter joined her, eyes scanning quickly. "He's not just trying to destroy you. He's been weaponizing people's pasts across the country. Politicians, teachers, advocates, people who speak up. He's a surgeon, Maya said. He finds the scars and slices them open. Suddenly, the screens flickered. A familiar face appeared. Don't live. He sat in the same darkened room from the earlier tapes, though this time, the lighting was colder. Clinical. The camera was clearer. Hello again, he said smoothly. I assume by now, you've seen what I've left you. Carter stepped toward the screen. This is a recorded loop. He's not live. Maya narrowed her eyes. He's always 10 steps ahead. Dante's face shifted into a smirk. You came all this way for a story. Let me give it to you. The screen split into multiple feeds videos from across the country. Women being threatened. Men resigning from office. A teacher being discredited with deepfake audio. A pastor arrested under suspicious charges. All victims of Dante's slow burn machine. He continued, I don't care about money. I care about power. Real power. The kind that makes people question the truth. That's the game. Carter spoke to Garrett. Pull the server now. We need to freeze this data before it purges. Hi. But Dante's voice cut in again, as if anticipating. And yes, by the time you pull that drive, the backup will be gone. Burned through fail-safes, across 3 countries. Maya clenched her jaw. He was watching, even now, somehow. But then something shifted. A feed opened, one not of surveillance, but of a room, a child's bedroom. Familiar. The boy's room. The camera was hidden in their lamp. Garrett's face went pale. He got in again. No, Maya said slowly, eyes scanning the scene. That's an old recording. The paint on the wall. We repainted 2 weeks ago. Carter leaned closer. Then why show us this? Maya's voice dropped. Because he wants us to feel helpless. Right before we realize we're not. Suddenly, Garrett gasped. Wait, he made a mistake. Look. He pointed to a log in the corner of the screen. This feed, this one is live. And it's not the boy's room. It's his. What? Carter said. Garrett tapped furiously. The source IP, it's bouncing. But the delay is microseconds. He's within 50 miles. Carter snapped into action. Trace it, now. Maya stared at the monitor. The room. The edge of a coffee mug. She knew that mug. It was from a diner near Route 17. A place they'd met Teresa Bell in just days ago. He's nearby, she said, hiding in plain sight. The signal narrowed. 10 miles east. On airstrip. Private hangar, Moss reported through comms. Recently leased under a shell corp linked to the Langston Foundation. Garrett swore. He's planning to disappear. Right now. Carter barked into her mic. Mobilize. All units move. We're heading to the airstrip. Maya turned back to the screen, where Dante's face lingered. I'm coming for you, she whispered. Then they ran. The hangar loomed like a shadow against the dusk sky. Wind whipped across the tarmac. A small jet hummed, its engines spinning to life. The FBI convoy skidded into the gravel, doors flinging open, agents spilled out. Carter yelled, Secure the perimeter. Maya ran straight toward the jet, Garrett on her heels. Dante appeared in the doorway, just a silhouette, long coat flapping. You won't make it out, Maya shouted. He smiled, stepping back into the fuselage. Garrett raised his weapon. Engines are hot, we've got less than a minute. A shot rang out. Not from Garrett. From behind the hangar. Dante stumbled. Blood bloomed at his shoulder. An agent tackled him before he could rise. Chows erupted. But it was over. Maya stood over Dante, panting. He looked up, eyes still bright despite the pain. You ruined the art, he said softly. It was almost beautiful. No, Maya said. It was a sickness, and now it ends. Later that night, as the agents processed evidence and the team cataloged the recovered drives, Maya sat outside the hangar under a pale moon. Garrett sat beside her. You did it, he said. No, she replied. We did. Inside, Carter held the sealed hard drive, the last piece of Dante's empire. And somewhere, far from the noise, the world began to shift. Not because one monster had been stopped, but because one woman chose not to stay silent. 3 weeks had passed since the night the jet was grounded, since Dante had been taken into federal custody with a bullet wound and a bitter smirk. The story made headlines once. A cyber terrorist apprehended at a rural airstrip. There were no names, no footage of Maya, no mention of the Langston Foundation or what it had narrowly become. Just a headline quickly buried by louder news. And Maya was glad for that. She stood on the back porch of the Langston estate, a warm mug of black coffee in her hands, her eyes fixed on the sunrise spilling over the tree line. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of dew and honeysuckle. The boys were laughing somewhere inside the house, their footsteps pounding like tiny thunder. Clara's voice followed, stern but affectionate. It was quiet. It was normal. And it felt strange. Garrett joined her, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. He'd been on calls all morning, lawyers, board members, media consultants. The foundation was under intense scrutiny, but thanks to Carter's deft handling and the silent cooperation of the Bureau, the truth was being excavated carefully and cleanly. The shell companies were exposed. The money trails traced. Several high-profile resignations followed. Quietly, and with polite apologies. The public saw the tremors. Only a few knew the quake that had caused them. Garrett leaned against the railing. The board wants to name a new ethics director, he said. They want you. Mo. Maya sipped her coffee, not answering immediately. They know I'm a nanny, right? He smiled. They know you're a woman who took on a ghost network of blackmail, abuse, and political corruption with nothing but your fists, your voice, and a cracked security system. She gave a soft chuckle. Tempting. I already told them no, he added. She turned to him. You did? I told them if they want someone who plays politics and smiles for the press, they can call someone else. If they want someone who tells the truth even when it costs her everything, then maybe they deserve you. Maya looked down at her hands. Her fingers still bore faint scars from the night of the fire. Her voice was stronger now, steadier. But her heart was still learning to trust silence, to believe peace could last. Garrett's voice softened. He's not going to hurt you anymore, or anyone else. She nodded. I know. But it's not just about Dante, Garrett. It's about the people who looked the other way, the people who signed the checks and closed the doors. They're being dealt with. And what about the ones still hiding, the ones we didn't catch? He looked at her, and for once, had no answer. Maya finished her coffee and set the mug down. I want to take the job, but only if I can do it my way. Garrett's smile returned. They'd be lucky to have you. That evening, a community gathering was held in the estate gardens. Garrett insisted he wanted to thank the people who had supported them, the agents who stayed late, the staff who didn't ask questions but protected the boys anyway. Clara made sweet tea, and Maya cooked her famous cornbread, which vanished in minutes. The twins ran through the crowd, squealing with delight as Eli sprayed his brother with a garden hose. No one wore suits. No one gave speeches. It wasn't a press event. It was a celebration. Carter arrived just as the sun dipped below the hills. She looked different, civilian clothes, her hair down, a rare smile softening her face. Maya spotted her near the food table and walked over. You came, Maya said. Wouldn't miss it, Carter replied. Also, I wanted another slice of that cornbread. Maya laughed. You earned it. Carter's tone shifted. He's talking, by the way, slowly, but the Bureau's pulling together a full case. You think he'll go away for good? Carter looked her in the eye. No one who builds an empire on silence and fear walks out untouched anymore. Not if we keep showing up. Maya nodded. Then we'll keep showing up. A few feet away, Alonzo stood near a cluster of fireflies, holding a plate of food and smiling quietly. He looked healthy now. Clean clothes, steady hands. Therapy was helping. So was simply being seen, believed. Later that night, after the guests had left and the stars claimed the sky, Maya tucked the twins into bed. They were exhausted from laughter and sugar, their eyelids heavy. Eli grabbed her hand before she turned off the light. Are the bad guys gone now? He whispered. She knelt beside him, brushing hair from his face. Some of them. But if more come, we'll be ready. You don't need to worry. He smiled, sleepy. 'Cause you're the strongest nanny in the world. She kissed his forehead. Not just a nanny. Nope, he yawned. You're a superhero. Outside, Garrett waited on the porch. She joined him, folding her arms against the breeze. They stood in silence a moment. "You ever think," Maya said, "that maybe the best kind of justice is the kind nobody sees?" Garrett turned to her. "Not nobody, just the ones who matter." She nodded. "I think I'm finally ready." "For what?" "To stop running, to build something instead of just surviving it." He reached for her hand. She let him. Above them, the wind rustled the trees. Crickets chirped. The world, for once, sounded like peace. And deep in the distance, across cities and screens and secret servers, the cracks left by Dante's empire continued to grow. Not loud, but enough, because truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers and keeps whispering until the silence breaks. True strength doesn't come from power, wealth, or influence. It comes from standing up for what's right, even when you stand alone. Maya's journey reminds us that justice isn't always loud or glamorous. Sometimes, it's quiet, steady, and deeply personal. In a world where systems fail and silence protects the guilty, it takes courage to speak up, to protect the vulnerable, and to hold darkness accountable. No matter your title or past, one voice when rooted in truth can ignite change. Protect innocence and rebuild broken trust. Justice may be delayed, but when pursued with integrity and heart, it is never truly denied.